Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Krishna Nam Sankirtan ki jai. Bol Premanande. Umajnana timirandasya Jnananjana salakaya Chaksurun militam yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Ajnulambita pujo kanakabadato Sankirtanai kapitaro kamalaya takso Vishwambaro dwijavaro yugadharma palo Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karunavotaro Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Gododai Pushpavanto Chitro Samdo Tamono Vandeham Shri Ramakrishna Abhaya Charana Sakho Sukhado Paramanando Sundaro Subala Priyo He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostude Tapta Kancana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Shri Gauri Vaishnava Guru Parampara ki jai. O Bhaktivinoda ki jai. O Premanande. We're continuing our discussion of the Prakat Leela, and yesterday we heard about Krishna's Kedar Rag, his expertise in flute playing, which, as we discussed at the time, given the time frame of the progressing Prakat Leela, was a work in progress, his main aim being to capture the attention of Radha in no uncertain terms, such that she would rendezvous with him, right? So, Kedar Rag ki jai, Kedarnath ki jai. And this was the evening then that followed the Govardhan Puja, the aftermath of the Govardhan Puja, which consisted of the crowning of Krishna as the heir to the throne of the cowherds, the prince of the cowherds, which didn't do that much for him because, again, as I said yesterday, he was preoccupied with his experience during the 7 days of lifting the hill that included, and was highlighted by exchanging glances in Purvarag with Shri Radhe, Ki Jai, Radha Krishna, Ki Jai. And so he played his flute. And this was also, as I mentioned, I think we've included on this note yesterday, the Ekadasi, but it was a short Ekadasi, which lasted for 18 hours. And so it ended six times 4, 18, with 6 hours left in the 24-hour span before sunrise, so 6 hours before sunrise. And so the window then for breaking the Ekadasi, which would have occurred 6 hours before sunrise, was between that time and the sunrise itself. Now, some people are of the opinion, some types of Vaishnavas, that we should follow the example of the Brajbasis in our practitioners' bodies. This is not something that's entertained in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Gaudiya Vaishnavism resolves this idea of the following in the footsteps of the Raigatmikas, and the fact that we now have a body that makes it difficult to do that. We might, for example, want to follow in the footsteps of the gopis in pursuit of Gopi Bhav and have a male body. So how to do that? Well, we could put on a sari, and of course, some people do that. And they try to, or their approach to the matter is, in every way possible, adopting the external appearance of a Brajbasi and trying to enter into the mood, for example, in this case of a woman, and so on. Now, this, again, is not something that is entertained or embraced in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, but there was a Gaudiya sadhu who proposed that and then was opposed, and the opposing party ultimately took the shape of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's comments to Rupa Kaviraj, who proposed this in a sophisticated way in terms of scriptural discourse and citing of various texts and so on and so forth. Well, he arose to the occasion of what has become the Gaudiya Orthodox perspective on this, and explained that yes, we should follow in this body, which we call a sadhaka deha, the example of the Brajbasis as they appear in this world in sadhaka dehas like Rupa, Sanatan, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Prabhupada, and so on and so forth. In their Gaur Lila Swarups, if you will. And this then, which is a work in progress, the purification of the spiritualization of the sadhaka deha, as that is accomplished, it gives rise to an internal meditative swarup in which the same impediments that we have from the body of our birth as a male or female, for example, don't exist. We have a meditative body like a gopi, like a gopa, and so on. These are the higher stages of bhakti as a practice that carries into the practice, if you will, of Bhava Bhakti, which is also sometimes considered siddha, perfection. But there's a practice that goes on there. And ultimately, the perfection lies in prem and vastu siddhi, from swarup siddhi to vastu siddhi. Vastu siddhi means that to realize that swarup and then take birth in the prakat lila. And still you have not attained the aprakat goal, but they are in that company of the Nityasiddhas. Then further qualification is developed through association that, practically speaking, cannot be developed without that association. So the penultimate stage, if you will, to take birth in the Prakat Lila. And from there, given that it's a portal to the Aprakat Lila, we enter there. Meanwhile, the sadhaka, perfected sadhaka Deha will appear in similar form, but as younger and male, as a young Brahmin boy in Gaur Lila. So some outside of Gaudiya Vaishnavas still make this case, and among other things, they say, to what extent I'm not sure, but one of the things that they promote is the idea that, well, the gopis, they didn't follow Ekadasi, so we don't follow Ekadasi. But from the Bhagavatam, we know that that's not the case. The king of the cowards, Nanda Maharaj, was very careful to follow Ekadasi, and he was a very Pakka Vaidhi Bhakta in appearance, worshipping as he did Bhagavan Sri Narasimhadev in his home. In Aprakat Lila, Madhuvan becomes the adopted, more or less, son of Nanda Maharaj and lives in the house of Nanda Maharaj in the compound. And he is the head Pujari, who has a number of assistants. Even as he is really active in the cowherding Leelas of Krishna and Balaram and their friends, always insisting on the difference between himself and themselves, him being a Brahmana and warranting thereby their respect and regard, which they are often lacking in offering, giving the joke, if you will, of a Brahmin, that he is being a Vinasaka, a jester, the kind of personification of Hasyarasa. So where do we find that Nanda Maharaj is observing the Ekadasi? Well, that is on this night. He observed Ekadasi, it's told. And because the Ekadasi, which we assume means he's following all the Ekadasis, right? We know also, of course, that he and Yashoda Maya in the Prakat Lila, they wanted to have a son, and that this desire for the king to have a son was shared by all of the Brajbasis. For the king to have a son would mean that the heir to the kingdom would be clear and it would go on and so forth. In spite of the fact that everything was perfect, otherwise there was this underlying anxiety that increased year after year after year, as Nanda and Yashoda had no son up until their older years, which is uncommon. Typically, we have our children in the earlier years. So what this was causing in the Prakat Lila is separation that the Prakat Lila is characterized by in a number of ways. It's characterized by separation, and the Aprakat Lila is characterized by union. The principal way in which the Prakat Lila is characterized by separation is that Krishna appears to leave Vrindavan, go to Mathura, go to Dwarka for a number of years. And for a long time and at a great distance, this causes the greatest, fullest measure of Vipralamba and the corresponding union when they come together, the fullest form of union. So this is not occurring in Aprakat Lila. Krishna is not going to Mathura and Dwarka and staying away for a long time, and so on and so forth. But this is another example of how in the Prakat Lila, there is an overriding influence of separation. It's not a bad thing. Separation makes the heart grow fonder. It's through the kind of low tide, if you will, of separation, we can enter into the ocean of prema and be carried away by the high tide of union. So a pervading influence, if you will, characterizing the Prakat Lila, excuse me, and this is an example of it, that there is a feeling of separation for Krishna before he's even born, right? All the inhabitants So time is ticking by. Nanda doesn't have a son. Well, next year. Nanda doesn't have a son. Well, next year. Of course, in due course, well, what my point here is, of course, that Nanda and Yashoda, this troubled them as well. And as you know, as I've said many times, they shared notes with one another, and they came to the conclusion, well, we fail to actively pursue progeny, because whenever the thought of doing so comes to our minds, each of us independently, without having spoken to one another, gives up on that, because we have, as they shared notes, we have the same impression, which is, I want to have a son, and I want the son to be more beautiful than Narayan, more qualified than Narayan, so on and so forth. And then I think Nanda Maharaj is saying, and Yashoda says, I was thinking the same thing. Were we crazy? We're Vaishnavas. We want a son that's better than God. We're offensive, practically. So they're all good Vaidhi Bhaktas, worshiping Narayan. Of course, I guess they would appear in Baladev Vidibhushan's terms as sanishta. Means they seem to have other desires for their family, and so they also follow Varnashram, and that gives some support to their budding faith in Vaishnavism, and which would take them to exclusive adherence in Vaishnavism, and only a show of Varnashram for the sake of others, which would take them to nirapeksha, renounced contemplative life, and no social obligations remaining. Of course, this is not going to happen to the Golok people, given who they are. They're Nitya Siddhas appearing in this world, and offering us through their appearance opportunity to enter into the Leela. So they share notes, and they realize this is a problem, and so they make a concerted effort. They decide, I should say, to make a vow for 1 year, very austere vow in the for the pleasure of Narayan, and put their case in his hands. Forgive us for thinking like this. We want a son. Put it in your hands, and a very strict vow, some kind of a Dwadasi vow, maybe only drinking milk or something like that. So the implication of that, of course, is that they had the capacity. After all, they're Nitya Siddhas. So their senses are completely controlled. We shouldn't think otherwise. It may look like they're not. They don't look like rishis. They don't look like sadhakas. They look like we worship Narayan, but our mind is on Krishna, our son. Where is he? Oh, come on. He's over there, right? Like going to church on Sunday, but the family is the main thing. This is how they appear. So, of course, their son is Krishna, so that he's a source of Narayan, but that's not something that they're preoccupied with, that tattva. But to arrive at where they are, by following, as we should, in their footsteps appropriately, in the ways in which I described, following the example of the Goswamis, and so on and so forth, then we'll have to be completely sense-controlled, so we can understand they're completely sense-controlled. So here in the Prakat Lila, they perform a vrat that would be difficult for a sage to follow, with the idea of having a son, an extraordinary son, maybe not as good as Narayan, but maybe empowered by Narayan, something like that, right? Possibly. And of course, that comes to be the case. And in 1 year's time, shortly before the time of the birth, Purnamasi appears in the Braj along with Madhu Mangal, and awes everyone by her mysterious nature and knowledge, and she reveals to the inhabitants that soon, they said, let us build you a house along the Krishna. Krishna means dark, black. It's another name for the Jamuna, whose waters are very dark. And she said, oh, the Veda has spoken through you. Yes, I will live near the Krishna. And what it means is Nanda Maharaj will soon have a son. And of course, his name will be Krishna. Everyone was overjoyed by that much more, enamored by and feeling filled with feelings of gratitude towards the elder mystic Purnamasi, who then they built a little hut for her along the banks of the Jamuna, where she lived with Madhuvan Mangal until later on in the Prakat Leela, she handed him over to Krishna. That's still to come. Handed him over to Krishna, who then became a fast friend and companion, and more or less, as I said, adopted son of Nanda Maharaj, living in the house with Krishna. So, point here is that they are Nityasiddhas. All that we will develop, like sense control and all the vows that we follow and so on and so forth, they are the fruit of that. Attaining that lila will be the result of that. Everything, if that matter, that's found that you could accomplish or attain by varnashram will be there. Everything that you could attain by yoga that will be there. All the cities will be there at your disposal, but nobody cares for them. Mukti is there. Beyond mukti, it's the prem prayojan. Everything there. Anything you could accomplish by any other method in the Vedas, karma marg, jnana marg, yoga marg, so deity work, deva worship, and so on. This will all be accomplished and much, much, much more. That's what the Brajalila speaks to us about. When we see the observance of the Ekadasi, everything that's in Vaidhi Bhakti is there. When we see its adherence to Varnashram, praise of the Brahmins, and so on. And social fabric, the social system is a Varnashram system. This is what it means. The result of these things will be found and more in the pursuit of Uttam Bhakti. So much impetus then we have to pursue it. And so Nanda Maharaj was observing the Ekadasi. And the problem arose on this night that while the para and the time for breaking the Ekadasi was in this window 6 hours before sunrise, it was also thought to be scripturally prohibited to bathe in the Jamuna or in the river before the sunrise. Now, who would know that? Well, it's not that well known. You just learned it right now, right? How long have you been practicing on me? 50 years or so. See? So it's not a well-known fact, but Nanda knew this fact. In fact, even some of the Deva's assistants didn't know this fact, and it wasn't taught to them by their teacher, by the god himself or the goddess herself. But Nanda knew. Therefore, Nanda took a bath in the Jamuna before sunrise because also he knew, now make it even more complicated. Not only is it difficult, is it fairly unknown that you shouldn't bathe in the river before sunrise, but further, he knew that if it so happens that the Paran window for breaking the Ekadasi falls, as it does in this case, before the sunrise, then the prohibition for bathing in the Jamuna before the sunrise is overridden by the vow that, by the procedure for breaking, the appropriate time for breaking the Ekadasi, which is a vow. It's called Hari Varshana, the day of Hari. It's all about celebrating Bhagwan in so many ways. And so Bhaktas are very strongly follow the Ekadasi. And so he bathed in the Jamuna, and apparently, to those less aware, less informed, broke the rules. And therefore, he was apprehended within the Jamuna by one of the assistants of Varuna. But what he did was he bathed in the river, and then he sat there in meditation on Narayan, and then he was brought under, and he was in samadhi. So the fact that he was underwater, he didn't realize that. He was in deep in samadhi on Narayan from Goloka, meditating on Narayan in samadhi. Of course, then Nanda has his own assistants and so forth, Gopa men, and they cried out. Nanda has been taken into the river, and so Krishna and Balaram heard and awoke. And Krishna told Balaram, "You stay here, protect Yashoda, and I'll bring back Nanda." And into the Jamuna he went. Right? And there he went to the underwater abode of Varuna, god of the waters. Right? And there was Nanda sitting in meditation, and Varuna, seeing Krishna, paid his obeisances to Krishna, said, "Here is your father." Krishna touched his feet, father's feet, and Nanda's meditation broke. He was meditating on Narayan. His meditation broke, and there was Krishna. He's trying to put this all together. You remember now, you just saw Krishna lift Govardhan Hill, and he had to try to explain that to everybody else and to himself as well. Is our son God or not? Now I'm meditating on Narayan, and I come out of the trance, and there's Krishna standing there, and I'm underwater in Varuna's abode. And so Varuna praises Krishna before Nanda Maharaj. Before Nanda Maharaj came out of samadhi, he told, "Oh, this is my Muda, stupid assistant. He didn't know all the rules. He's made offense. Please forgive me. My assistant has made an offense. I should have educated him better. He should have never done this. Nanda was right to do this." Again, the implication here is that there are instances in the Prakat Lila where it looks like they're violating, they don't know the rules. This will come up again in the Yagnik Brahmanis Lila that follows ahead, where the cowherd boys go and ask for food during the yajna. They had, and if you look at it carefully, see they knew when to ask, so that they knew the intricacies of the Vedic yajna that the Brahmins were preoccupied with and absorbed in, so absorbed in it that they lost sight of the goal of all such Vedic yajnas, which is to please Krishna. And the cowherd boys, of course, were there to please Krishna, coming to get food, offering from Krishna. But they asked right at the right time. So these are subtle indications in the Leela that speak to us about this point, right? That again, that we don't need anything else to improve. Nothing can improve bhakti. Only bhakti can give bhakti. Whatever can be accomplished by any other method, sadhana, will be accomplished and more by exclusive devotion to Krishna. So, when Nanda Maharaj came to external consciousness, Varuna had chastised his assistant to the satisfaction of Krishna. Then he just blurted out, "Namo tubhyam bhagavate brahmane paramatmane." He basically said here in the Leela narrative, he basically repeated a very important verse of Srimad Bhagavatam in terms of tattva. Vadanti tat tattvavidas tattvam yad jnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdate. This verse appears first, I believe, in Tattva Sandarbha, and the entire Bhagavad Sandarbha and Paramatma Sandarbha are an elaboration on this verse. It's a unique insight of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, where in this verse, 3 names of God are given: Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagwan. So you can find other Vaishnava Sambradayas, and they think, well, yeah, this is a verse. It says he's known as Brahman, he's known as Bhagwan, he's known as Paramatma. There's different ways of talking about the absolute and so forth. But of course, our insight is these are different features of the absolute that are realized by different approaches to the absolute that correspond with them. And there's a gradation in them. Brahman for the Nirvisheshvadi Jnanis, Paramatma for the yogis, Bhagavan for the bhaktas, and of course, Swami Bhagavan. There's a nice verse of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, the Vastu Nirdesh Shloka of his Chaitanya Charitamrita. What does he say? Yad Yadadvaitam Brahmapanishadi Tarapyasyat Tanubha Atmantarayami Purusha Itisho Shamsha Vibhava Sad Aishvarya Purna Sa Iha Bhagavan Swayam Mayam Nachetanya Krishna Jagati Paratatvam Param Iha. He takes this verse of Bhagavatam and combines it with the insights of Krishna's Tu Bhagavan Swayam, a later verse in the third chapter of the first canto. This verse I'm referring to comes in the first chapter, or the first canto, second chapter. Third chapter is about the avatars. So Krishna's Tu Bhagavan Swayam. What does he say? Yadadvaitam Brahma Upanishad. The Upanishads often speak about Brahman and the oneness between Atma and Brahman. We talked about this. The light coming through the hole in the cave, that's the sun. It's a primary kind of 101 way of talking about what is Brahman, like you. It's like this. It's a ray of light, but there's much more than that, right? So, Yadadvaitam Brahmapanishadi Tarapyaset Tanubha. Tanubha, he says, that which is talked about in the Upanishads and called Brahman is his Tanubha, is the pa, the aura coming from his Tanu, his body. Wow, you're interested. Whose body? Yadadvaitam Brahmapanishadi Asyatanubha Ya Atmantaryami Purusho Dihosha Sabhava. So and let me go on, he said, and that who is known as the Paramatma is his Vaibhav, his partial expansion. The Purusha avatars, Karnadakshai, Garbhodakshai, Shirodakshai, these are the Purusha avatars, the first avatars, the first descent from the Paravyom into this world, from whom the Leela avatar, or through whom the Leela avatars come, the Yuga avatars come, so on and so forth. Big Purusha avatar. Mahavishnu is only his partial expansion. So he Bhagavan Sasvaya, and he is Bhagavan full with 6 opulences. Not all manifestations of Bhagavan exhibited all 6 opulences. Yadadvaitam Brahmapanishadi Tadasya Apitanubha Ya Atmantaryami Purusha Itiso Shamsa Vibhava. Sad Aishvarya, 6 opulence. Sad Aishvarya Purna, full. Sad Aishvarya Purna Sa Iha Bhagavan Sa Swayamayam Nachetanya Krishna Jagati Paratatva. He who is full of 6 opulences, full, the full sense. Krishna, full of wealth, strength, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. This Chaitanya is the same. We saw all these opulences also in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We can see them in the Shringadev to some extent, and to some extent to Ramchandra, but more fully in Krishna and fully in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Of course, in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela, they were all there, but there is an emphasis for the sake of sadhana on his knowledge and his vairagya. He gave the knowledge of Sambandha Gyan to Rup Sanatan. So in the Madhya Leela, we take advantage of that. His example as a renunciate, giving up the world for Krishna Bhakti. Of course, when we embrace those opulences of Mahaprabhu and the Leelas that correspond with them, and become a real sadhaka, like he did, he showed how to conduct oneself in a sadhaka deha. Right? That's the whole Madhya Leela. What happened? What was he doing? He was doing Nam Sankirtan, preaching to the thinkers of the society, the Sarvabhauma Bhattacharjas, the priestly class, Venkatabhatta in South India, Prakashananda Saraswati in Benares, and so forth. He was converting them. Meanwhile, Nityananda, as I said the other day, was doing the Vaishnava welfare work, picking up the downtrodden people, mercantile class in particular of Saptagram, delivering them and so forth. And in the context of delivering them, feeding them, providing houses for them and so forth. This is part of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's out with Jivadaya, Krishnanam, Sarvadharma Sar. But Mahaprabhu is dealing with the Brahminical class, the educated people, and Nityananda Prabhu, his other self, dealing with the downtrodden people. So no one is left out, right? But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's example, of course, like Nityananda's as well, and that of the Goswamis, is full dedication. Doesn't mean you have to be a sannyasi, but a full dedication. There are many, many householders, as I mentioned the other day, householders, and they were fully dedicated in bhakti, engaged in bhakti. They were in Baladev Vibhushan's terms, paranishta devotees. They had no need or interest in varnashram, but for the social, keeping up with the social fabric as households, they conducting themselves as ideal citizens, they would follow that only as much as it did with the absolute. When the two departed, that means varnashram and parabhakti. So going in parallel lines, almost parallel, but just a little difference, ends up like this, two chords, right? So where varnashram can take you, and uttam bhakti blesses. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what happened? His public life was non-different from his private life, right? He wouldn't do practice in the morning and then go out in the day and do something entirely different. But his practice from morning to night were the same. So his private life and his public life were the same, fully immersed in Krishna Bhakti and active. Kirtan. Kirtan resulted in other people becoming influenced and so forth. What is the result of this? What is the result of the Madhya Lila? The result of the Madhya Lila is the Antya Lila. He went inside into a Siddharupa. He stepped into the shoes and sari of Radha internally. He didn't wear a sari doing Nam Sankirtan during Ratha Yatra, but he did dance in the Ratha Yatra. And Jagannath's eyes, which are already pretty big and wide, they became so much wider. Seeing Radha's dancing. Krishnadas Kaviraj says, Ami Shisha Guru Natya. I am the student, and the dancing school of Radha is my guru. As she moves. When Nityananda Prabhu saw Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at a distance and realized that that Jagannath was seeing the form of Radha in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's form, which is like externally kind of the form of a sadhaka, he was seeing that. He became stunned, and the cart would not move. Even they put an elephant behind the cart, trying to get it to move, trying to figure out what was the problem. Is there a rock underneath the wheel, or what is it? No. For internal reasons, it stopped, right? I was once in Ratha Yatra in San Francisco, more than once, but one occasion with Prabhupada, where he first started his Ratha Yatras in the Western world. Beautiful story, beautiful Leela for Prabhupada, who in his childhood had the ambition. What was his childhood ambition? To go to Ratha Yatra from Bengal, to go overnight the train, about 10 hours to Jagannath Puri to take part in the Ratha Yatra of Jagannath. And he was so insistent on it that his father gave him a toy Rath cart. Prabhupada once told me, he called me to his bedroom. He said, when I was a boy, then I wanted to go to Jagannath Puri. And I was so insistent that my father gave me a toy Rath Yatra. He said, and I used to keep it next to my bed, and I would sleep, and I would wake in the night and reach out, make sure it was still there. And during Ratha Yatra, I would perform Ratha Yatra in the village. And he said, and everyone thought it was a very charming play. He said, his eyes got very big. He said, but it was real. Now I am doing that all over the world. This was brought great joy to him. Right? So anyway, this one occasion in Ratha Yatra, the Ratha cart was going. Jagannath's cart, and he was riding as he would on Subhadra's cart in the middle, right?
Yeah.
And the whole show stopped. Who know why? And Prabhupada got off the Roth cart. This is in Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, and went into the bushes and passed urine. Then got back on. And afterward, one of the sannyasis, I don't think I was a sannyasi at that time, asked me, what was the best part of the Rath Yatra? I said, I don't know. You tell me. You got the answer. You know what answer you want. He said, Prabhupada, the Jagannath stopped his whole Rath Yatra so that Prabhupada just see how special is Prabhupada, how much Jagannath loves Prabhupada. Beautiful story. So at any rate, the result, the fruit, if you will, of the sadhana, the sadhya, the goal that arises out of it, of an appropriate way of conducting oneself in the sadhaka day, which is a work in progress, as it perfects, then the internal life comes. Internal life that makes one, practically speaking, as Mahaprabhu was, incapable of functioning in relation to the external world. We see this in Bhaktivinoda, the last 4 years of his life. He was in complete solitude. Prabhupada, he could hardly go into solitude. He was so bent on preaching. But in the end, in the last years, he was only in his bed. And in the last months, only dreaming about going on Govardhan Parikram during Kartik Mas, month of Kartik, and so forth. Very, very inspiring and endearing to see. But Mahaprabhu, point is, set this example. He didn't teach us from the very beginning, from the time he got initiated, to sit down along the banks of the Ganga and do Leela Smarnam. This is Acharya Leela. Acharya means, achar means behavior. The Leela in which he teaches the proper behavior as a guru should, conduct, example, being an example for sadhakas. So he didn't get initiated and sit down and do Leela Smarnam. He went here, there, and everywhere doing Nam Sankirtan. He had a very active life. And the Goswamis, following his directive, were yes, they went to Vrindavan under his order, Rup Sanatan, and they were ordered to establish the standard of deity worship, write books about Bhakti Sadhana, Bhakti Sadhya, to excavate the places of Krishna's pastimes, which they did, and as a result got patronage of kings and queens and princes who built ghats and temples and monuments. Krishna did this here, Krishna did that there. Here's a temple for Radha Govinda, Rupa Goswami. Here is one for Jiva Goswami, Radha Damodar, one for Gopal Bhatta Goswami, Radharaman, Kijai, so on and so forth, right? That's like very active service in the course of their manifest presence. Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Jiva Goswami, big temples were established. I mean, the Radha Govinda temple is an architectural wonder, and it's huge. They're all very big temples. Once, the younger brother of Bhaktisiddhanta, Lalit Prasad, criticized Bhaktisiddhanta. He's left the Marg building all these big temples. Should sit and do bhajan. Well, Bhaktisiddhanta disagreed with them. We don't disrespect Lalit Prasad, but different opinion. And his opinion seems to correspond with what the Goswamis were doing. He coined the phrase Brihat Mridanga for the press, went into printing books. This was not in style for the printing. Heidelberg, press, one of the presses of the time, state-of-the-art presses he had in the temple compound, printing. So many books and books of Bhakti Vinod and periodicals, a daily paper, Nadi Prakash, twice, I think, monthly, The Harmonist, so on and so forth. And opening temples, 64 months. Well, this corresponds with how the Goswamis were conducting themselves, and as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu conducted himself, right, in the Madhya Lila, which resulted in the Antya Lila. where, in other words, his public life, the way he conducted himself in his sadhaka brought about internal life that eclipsed the world itself, even the idea of preaching, and so on and so forth. In other words, if you speak nicely enough about Krishna, he'll become attracted. Glorifying him, ho bhagyam, nanda gopa vajokasam, yan mitram paramanandam, puna brahma sanatanam. Glorifying his Swarup Shakti, his people, the people of Braj. Ho bhagyam, ho bhagyam, nanda gopa, the people of Nanda, of Braj. Yan mitram, who the Paramananda has become the friend of. Yan mitram paramanandam, purna brahma sanatanam. What a place to glorify that. This is Pujala Ragata Gaurava Bhange, Matala Hari Jan Kirtanarangi, the song of Bhaktisiddhanta, a line from a song of Bhaktisiddhanta that he composed for the procession, leading the deities in Calcutta from a rented house to the finished Bagh Bazaar marble temple, a temple of Gaudiya Vaishnavism in Calcutta. They were all in the Dham. The sadhus didn't leave the Dham. He left the Dham. He said, my zone is wherever there's Maya. There, I'm going there. Right? So the song says that in the Rag Marg is such that we will focus ourselves on Kirtan and have reverence for the Rag Marg itself, not reverence for Krishna like he's Narayan, but for the people of Braj. These who are Krita Punya Punya, as Sukadev said before he passed out. Who are these people? Oh my God. That they can interact with Bhagwan like this. Who are, what have they done? What kind of sadhana have they performed? And this is what the Goswamis have come. Here's the answer. This is the sadhana they've done. We'll show you how to do it. Nana Shastra Vicharana Nipuno Saddharma Samstapako Lokanam Hitakarano Tribhuvane Manyo Sharanyakaro. One day Rupa Sanatan. Where do you go? Shri Jiva Gopalako. They set an example, they wrote his books, all these things, how to enter in there. And Mahaprabhu himself set the example. So this internal meditation is for more advanced world. We learn about that. We should hear about that. We should get some taste for that, know where the goal is, hear about what it's like, but how to go there, we can't go there with our shoes on. No. We can't take some other process to cleanse our heart. There's no more efficacious process for cleaning the heart than bhakti itself. So bhakti gives bhakti. Bhakti sandhataya bhaktya. Only bhakti can give bhakti. Nothing can give what bhakti can give. Otherwise it would be superior to bhakti. You can't enhance your bhakti by any other method. To the extent to which you can't practice bhakti, well, there are other things that you can do that are good. That's true for the Samnishta devotee. But so from the Adi Lila comes the Anti Lila. How can you teach what's happening in the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Anti Lila as he swoons and falls and passes out in the arms of Rupa Sanatan, Ramananda and Swarup Damodar? Krishnadas says, "Ho!" and he fell in the arms of Ramananda Goswami, who Ramananda Roy, who pacified him like Subal does in Krishna Lila, and into the arms of Swarup Damodar, who pacified him like Lalita Saki does from the camp of Radha. These two in their arms. They cited verses to augment the moods of Mahaprabhu that they could detect that he was pursuing the mood of Radha, some aspect of that. They would quote from Jayadev Goswami and so forth, poets, these Lila Sukha and so on, right? So this will come about naturally in due course by focusing on Rishikena Rishikesha Sevan Bhakti, to use your senses for the satisfaction of the senses of Krishna. And a new identity will naturally arise. It's just common sense, because the identity that we have now is arising from using our senses in relation to sense objects that the senses determine are good. We have a new determination. If it's pleasing for Krishna, senses, then it's good. Then I'll use my senses for that. So very common sense, a new identity will come. And the old identity will fade. The Varnashram identity, the outside Varnashram, the material identity, this will be dissipated. Which it will anyway. Why hang on to it? Why try to hang on? It's going to go anyway. Why not do it in a way that you can replace it with an identity that will endure, right? And will be happy like the people of Braj, right? So Nanda Maharaj, he was a good follower. He heard Jamuna say, Namo Tubhyam Bhagavate Brahmane Paramatmane. What the heck, he thought. This is echoing a verse from the Bhagavatam. As I said, the whole Bhagavad Sandarbha, Paramatma Sandarbha are coming out of this verse, which tells us there are different methods for approaching the Godhead, and there will be corresponding faces of the Godhead that will be resultant attainment. Brahman for the Gyanis, Paramatma for the yogis, Bhagwan for the devotees, and Swami Bhagavan, right, for the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. As Krishnadas took this verse and said, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is that Sadaishvarya Purna himself, Krishna. And there are many examples. I said, like his detachment. By that I mean his sannyas, which he said an example in the Madhya Lila, right? Very strictly following. We don't have to be sannyasis, but we should strictly follow sadhana bhakti. That will result in bhava bhakti. The result of sadhana bhakti is bhava bhakti. Just like the result of an unripe mango is a ripe mango, but give it time. You can't just sit down and eat an unripe mango and say, pretend it tastes ripe. Put a little salt on it. No. That's a different thing. It's a mango, but it's an unripe mango. You want a ripe mango, then take some time, right? Take some time. And we'll hear, if not today and tomorrow, it might take some time. Might take quite some time. Might take some yugas, possible. But it's worth waiting for. So Nanda Maharaj, so perfectly he followed the Ekadasi. He was saved by Krishna, but he heard this verse too. This is a verse in the Leela narrative that is echoing what is said in the Tattva section of the Bhagavatam, right? Krishna is Brahman. Here the order is different. Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavaniti. Last is best. Bhagavan, Paramatma, and Brahman are aspects of Bhagavan. But the way in which it's spoken by Varuna, the order is a little different, but in the grammar, it's clear that Paramatma and Brahman are aspects of Bhagavan. And this is who Bhagavan, this is who Nanda Maharaj is meditating on. When he comes to outward consciousness from his meditation on Narayan, there is Krishna. Right? So this is exhilarating in one sense, but somewhat bewildering. Nanda Maharaj has to take this. I just explained to everybody after the Govardhan Puja that, he's special, but let's not get carried away here. He's not God. We should still treat him like, son, nephew, member of our village. And if we don't do that, that's our bhav. We can't change that, right? We can't change that. Nothing can change that, is the implication. Even in the face of it, showing the opposite. I'm not your son, I'm Bhagwan. Still, such is the power of that brain, right? But He has some explaining to do because he's going to come out of the Jamuna and they're going to say, "What the heck happened?" And he's going to say, "This is what happened. I saw Varuna and Krishna saved me, and Varuna said this, and holy cow, holy cow!" And so the elders. This is a conversation with the elders, of course. For the boys, it's no problem. Krishna did a wonderful thing, you know. Yeah. Varuna thinks he's God. We know better than that. But he's a God to us, in a sense, amongst friends. He's the best. And so the elders, they come together again. This is a big event that just happened in Braj, in the Prakat Leela, as they do, one after another, right? Which is our instances in which Krishna is showing Aishvarya. And then their Madhurya has to come out to override it, but to teach us also, the Aishvarya is there, that Madhurya has a background of Aishvarya. This is God acting like an ordinary person. It's just an ordinary cowhide boy. It's nothing to get excited about, but God acting like one of us, how endearing, how charming. We could connect with that. As I often say, those moments in the Leela where narrative, where we speak about Krishna and he acts just like we do by our own experience emotionally, we laugh then. Oh, yes, Krishna. Yes. We're creating that's some scars, impressions of a likeness to an affinity for Krishna. He's like us. A minus for Krishna, which prema is characterized by, develops through this. And what an easy method, right? To hear about Krishna, his human-like leelas, and then those moments where we know, I know exactly I felt like that. I know what it's like to be a friend. I know what it's like to be a parent. We all have to be a son, and so forth. So we bond with him. Right? This is the way of ruchi. Philosophy is good to a point, right? Ruchi, taste will be the ultimate driving factor. Right? Have a taste with this. So Nanda Maharaj sits with the elders, and the elders think, I don't know how we can get around this now. Who is Krishna? Where is he from? Does he have his own abode? Where did he come from that he's come now as your son and in our village? So they approach him, say, where are you from? And by the way, any insight into where we're going in our next life? The gods are saying these things about you. Namo tubhyam bhagavate brahmane paramatmane, and so forth. So Krishna says, come with me. He takes him to what is the Brahma Hrada, where later on in the Leela, Akrura would have a mystic vision. He says, take a bath here. He puts him in the lake. It's called the Lake of Brahman. He immersed him in the lake. The implication is just like you can get merged in Brahman, lose all sense of anything else. He merged them in. He put them into Brahman. He's showing us what is the afterlife in the context of the Leela. That compared to this body sense of self, you're very different. You're a particle of consciousness. You have a likeness to me. And in a broad sense, that likeness is like Brahman. So he put them in Brahman. And then what did he do? He took them out of Brahman. Because this is a lesson for us also. Even those that go to Brahman, by that kind of sadhu sangha, Bhaktivinoda says, their form of liberation is indistinct. The full prospect of their self has not manifest. From there, they can go on. Even from Shantaras, we can go on. By association. So by Krishna's grace. How will that happen? Well, anyway, Krishna's showing that possibility is there. Or should we get waylaid there for a long time? As you could stay in the material world forever, practically. So he puts them in Brahman, he takes them out. And he takes them through Vaikuntha to Goloka. the Mahavaikuntha. And there they see everything like Braj, but they also see Krishna's being worshipped there by the mystic powers, by Brahmins and sages and so forth. So it's a little confusing, a little disconcerting. Looks like just like Braj, but it's the Deva Leela compared to the Nara Leela. It has some godly influence. Of course, this is the broader now scope of Golok that he showed them. This isn't happening in the center of the lotus Gokul within Goloka. That's just like Braj. Same. When Gopakumar went there, he said, it's just like Braj on earth. Just the same. It's exactly the same. Where have I come? But it's different at the same time. Those in the Apricot Leela, we get an insight into the nature of that place from Jiva Goswami's Gopal Champu, which is his final work, a retelling of the Leela. From the Apricot vantage point, he's retelling the Prakat Leela. So what is he doing there? Among other things, he's showing that those in the Apricot Leela find the Prakat Leela very, very charming. They're meditating on all those days we did this and that happened in the Prakat Leela, which in one sense is more complete, more sweet because it's more human-like. I've said before, it's like a movie filmed on location, right? In human society itself, without any props. So these are back and forth, which is better, in the Prakat Leela, you want to go to the Apricot Leela. From the Prakat Leela, they want to go to from the Apricot Leela, they want to go to the Prakat Leela. So Krishna shows them a Prakash in the Apricot Leela with some Aishvarya. And they're amazed by that. They don't know exactly what to think of that. And so they just think, we ask the question that's over our heads, and what we've seen, we cannot digest. We are just common people, village people. We should just focus on our day-to-day life. Just focus on the here and the now. Chop wood, carry water, as the Buddhists say, right? And this should be our focus, right? We should have that ideal, but focus in the here and the now, with the practical need of Krishna's service. And then naturally, like a fruit falls from the tree when it's ripe, then inner life will awaken and preoccupy us and overtake us. And we won't, in a hypocritical way, try to enter there, imitate there, to get followers. And so as has been a problem in the Gaudiya Vaishnava. So these are the following then chapters, or this is the following chapter, an overview of that from the Govardhan Lila, when taken in sequence from a chronological point of view. The Bhagavatam doesn't speak entirely, Sukadeva doesn't speak entirely in a chronological order. There are different reasons why he speaks. We'll hear something about that in tomorrow's talk, where we go to the next Leela. But these two are the ending of the autumn season. As Krishna is 7 years old, ending of the autumn season. From the autumn season, we'll go into Hemant, which is the beginning of winter. Margashirsha, the month that follows Kartik, that Krishna says of months, I am Margashirsha. So it's where we are now, in the Margashirsha month, and we'll hear about what happens in the Prakat Leela tomorrow. Shri Siddhaji Gopal ki jai, Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Gaur Premanande. What's the time? So, any questions? We have some time for questions. Yes, Agni Dev.
Early in the beginning of the lecture, Vaikuntha or Krishna, there is no Krishna doesn't go to Mathura.
In Golok, yeah. No, those places are there. Goloka has 3 major regions. There are many minor regions also. The major regions of Golok are Braj, Vrindavan, Mathura, and Dwarka. And Krishna is said to be perfect in Dwarka, more perfect in Mathura, and most perfect in Vrindavan. So there are eternal devotees in Dwarka. Some devotees in the Ramanuja school, Alwars, they have penetrated into there as queens, have attained such a position.
Krishna doesn't leave Braj and go to those places.
No, they're eternally going on in an apricot window, like we have the apricot window of the Leela in Braj, up to the point where Krishna would go. He's 11 and a half, but he's acting like and mature like sweet 16. And now Braj in the Prakat Leela is fully developed. Radha Kund is there, Govinda Kund is there, and so forth through different Leelas. So it frees the lens, and this is going on day after day. They're playing in that realm. Similarly, the lens is frozen in Mathura Leela and Dwarka Leela, and they're going on eternally. Because Mathura, Krishna goes to Mathura, right, in the Prakat Leela. So all those three regions are all there in Goloka. You can attain them, but it's not the goal of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. We look at the Prakat Leela of Mathura and Dwarka as reflecting back on the virtues of the Braj Leela. We'll see that if we get that far. If we get to Mathura, we should go to Mathura because Krishna goes with his friends. It's a very a painful, if you will, moment for Gopi Bhav and Vatsalya Bhav when Krishna leaves Vrindavan to go to Mathura, but his friends go with him. Their painful moment comes later, after the killing of Kamsa, and he tells them to go back. They carry the burden of their separation. And we'll get into that if we get that far. So, another question? Yes.
You mentioned that Purnamasi and Madhumanga come onto the scene in the Prakat Lila before Krishna takes birth. And so I'm wondering about the experience of Madhumanga, who, of course, like his main center would seem to be like the Pukanda Kishore Lila of Krishna. So is he kind of like on the scene waiting?
Yes, he's on the scene waiting. Madhumanga, question about Madhumanga. He enters into Braj in the Prakat Leela with Purnamasi, but it's only later in the Prakat Leela, after Krishna's born and enters his Poganda Leela, that he connects with Madhumanga connects with Krishna, becomes his companion and like an adopted son. So he's always the same age, waiting there with Purnamasi for the Leela to unfold. Then his moment comes. Right? Another question? Anything? Yes.
In the Uppercut Leela, the residents of Braj, do they remember the Prakat Leela pastimes as even though it didn't happen per se in that realm?
Yeah, I remember like the previous life.
Okay.
Yeah. In Gopal Champu, then there's two minstrels who are wandering and traveling, and they're connected with the extended family of Nanda Maharaj. When they come to Braj, he asks them, "You have this minstrel, talents as bards, in which you put people's lives to music and so forth. But you're also said to have mystic power to be able to know about their past lives. And can you tell us about our past lives and put that to music?" So he tells them. In poetry, he retells the whole Prakat Leela, and they are all marveling at that, and they have remembering it and relishing it, and so on and so forth. Yes.
I read something early before he asked this question. Nectar of Devotion prophets send your book to your son. Nice statement there. And one of Krishna friends tell him, you said you went to Mathura and you killed Kamsa. So now you're the king of Mathura. Said, that's kind of good for us, but the coward boyfriends, they're dying. They don't care about you until it comes. They're dying from separation of you.
Hmm.
Sister Peter.
So please come back.
Yeah. No one they can come back.
Could you hear that online? Nod your heads. Yes. No.
Yes.
Yes. Good. Very nice. Yeah. It's kind of good that he killed the Kamsa, but it's a disaster that he's gone. When will he ever come back? Hmm.
So they're lying in the valleys
Yeah.
and
Yeah. It's very a lot of pathos there. Yeah. As I said, Prakat Lila is characterized primarily by separation, but there's bliss, of course, in that separation, right? There's bliss in that separation. There's a verse that says somewhere that if you took all the bliss of the world and all the sorrow of the world and put it together, it wouldn't compare at all to the bliss of the union between the devotees and Krishna and the separation. But Sanatana Goswami has described the separation while extolling its virtues like dry ice. Dry ice is like very, very cold ice. But if you put it on your hand, it'll burn you. So how can a cold thing burn you? So the separation is burning in heat, but it's cooling at the same time. Right? It's blissful. Internally, it's very blissful. All right, so we will stop there. Here it's midday, so we'll chant our mantras and then we'll take prasad. All of you, please. Hope to see you again tomorrow. Shri Shri Radha Gopal ki jai.
Jai.
Premanande.
Hari
Hari Bol.
Guru Maharaj ki jai.